Billy Carson is attempting to sue me.
His fans call him the biggest threat to Christianity, and he calls himself,
guess what, guys? I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinders.
But Billy Carson recently faced a challenge like never before, a debate with Wes Huff, a Christian scholar and historian, and afterwards, Billy reportedly showed up to the producer's house at 2:30 a.m. demanding that the footage not be released.
For those of you who don't know, I was invited to interact with Billy on a podcast that he agreed to come on. It was not his podcast, where he was notified beforehand who I was and what we'd be talking about. After that debate took place, Billy attempted to suppress the footage. That didn't really work. I've released clips from that conversation. Well, Billy does not want you to see those clips and has sent me a cease and desist letter. I was really hoping that this could be an opportunity for Billy to learn, to see the major errors that he's been repeating and turn this into a learning experience. I even offered to follow up with Billy in order to show him how and where he could find accurate and credible resources in order to make sure that what he was saying was verifiably correct going forward in the future, so he and his audience could learn and proceed knowledgeably. Billy did not agree. But unfortunately for Billy, agreeing to a debate, losing that debate, and feeling embarrassed about that loss does not constitute legitimate grounds to litigate. Billy, I will agree to all the terms and conditions of the cease and desist letter that you have sent me if you agree to run it back, sit down with me in person, and have another discussion. This is my formal response.
Some people love to issue legal threats when they know they're lying or covering something.
This religion has got to come to an end because it's a farce. And I've been studying this Bible and doing book reports on the Bible since the age of 3 years old. You know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not. I give you all these prayers and verses off the top of my dome because I did them so many times.
Right.
And so, you know, just doing that, it became a part of me and understanding like, okay, well, there's something here, but at the same time, because I studied it so well, I recognized a lot of discrepancies that didn't make any sense to me before I came across the ancient tablets.
Right. Billy claims that he's been doing Bible reports since he was 3 years old.
And I've been studying this Bible and doing book reports on the Bible since the age of 3 years old.
First of all, most 3-year-olds can't even read, let alone do Bible reports. You freaked out so much that you were knocking at my client's door at 2:30 a.m. in the morning.
Now I got to handle that situation.
With legal papers, acting like you have the power to enforce some type of "you got served."
Well, if he shows up in Egypt, and we know that's a fact because I take people on tour every year to Egypt, and I take them to the house that Jesus lived in. It's a crypt. It's actually worship. People come there to see that bed that he laid in every single year. When I take people there, we take them straight there. And we know the path that he traveled throughout Egypt because it's a huge sign outside that Coptic church where he lived that shows where he went. Now, when he was in Egypt, what did he go there for? To learn the Egyptian mysteries. Who taught the Egyptian mysteries? Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. And so Thoth was the teacher of the Egyptian mysteries, or the ancient mysteries of what it was called. And then he leaves there and he goes to Tibet to learn Qigong and Reiki healing, which was confirmed by the Dalai Lama. And then he heads down into India to learn the mystic arts, teaching reincarnation all the way back.
Billy Carson has made a career by mocking Jesus and Christianity.
In your book, you talk about, in the Emerald Tablets, you talk about how the Emerald Tablets came 36,000 years before Jesus even walked the earth.
Yes.
And Jesus, when we talk about Jesus, he was a student of the Egyptian mysteries.
Yeah.
He learned reincarnation. He learned, what else? In India, right? In meditation.
In India, he learned the mystic arts. In Tibet, he learned Qigong and Reiki healing with the hands.
Yeah.
Confirmed by the Dalai Lama, by the way, in recent times. As the information has been handed down and passed down from Dalai Lama to Dalai Lama. This was confirmed through also Robert Grant, who visited with the Dalai Lama, verified just a few years ago, not too long ago.
He has been on Joe Rogan's podcast to spread his lies.
Next morning, and I told the teacher I have to go to the library inside the school, Rainbow Park, and I said I need to get all the encyclopedias on aerospace. And she gave me the encyclopedias on aerospace. And that's when I started researching from that exact moment.
Wow.
And I haven't stopped since.
So you were, how old? 8?
7.
7 years old.
Billy claims Christianity is responsible for half the problems we have on this planet.
And I'm telling you right now, the Christians on this planet are responsible for half the problems we got.
To help us reach more people, please like this video, subscribe, and enable the bell icon. When Billy was on Patrick's show, Patrick asked Billy Carson who he had debated, and he said this.
Who have you debated?
Whoever did debate.
Have you ever had like a public debate with anybody? Like it's on YouTube, we can see, or no?
Haven't had a public debate. There's only one person that wanted to debate me, but he only wanted to debate me so that he can clout chase.
Is he a big name or no?
Well, he's not a big name. He's trying to become big, but I looked him up first. I researched him before I disagreed to do it, and found out that he had did some things like he had a sexual abuse on a 19-year-old minor. And I'm like, why would I make a guy like this famous?
Who is this guy? Is it another YouTuber or?
Yeah, I won't give his name because,
okay.
yeah.
You're open to debating anybody?
I'm open, yeah.
Okay, so if we set up anything with anyone else that's maybe expert in the area of topic that you're okay with a panel like that?
Oh, yeah.
As you heard him, Billy was willing to debate anyone. His lies caught up with him this time when he sat down for a debate with Wes Huff, a Christian scholar and historian. Billy is now making legal threats to ensure the debate does not become public. Once you listen to the debate, you will quickly understand why he does not want anyone to see it. Billy claims Jesus was never crucified. If his claims were valid, there was no resurrection, and Christianity would collapse.
The statement is according to the Sinai Bible. Okay, according to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. That Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible. The text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary. According to some scholars, it's a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified.
I really appreciate the fact that you seem to have investigated to a certain degree some of these facts. Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus, like the codex that comes? Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification, because so you can actually go and see Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library. So you can go and see it. It's on display. And the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here.
Billy got caught. Wes had the manuscript Billy referred to earlier right before him. The manuscript contains the story of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So, we can safely conclude that Billy Carson was lying.
The only reason I asked for clarification is because I want to make sure that what I'm addressing is actually what you mean.
Gotcha.
And not addressing something else. Because the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. So my curiosity is just simply in kind of exploring when you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there. I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, mm-hmm. where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers are?
Where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
This is how you fact check someone. In this debate, Billy pointed to the book of Barnabas as proof that Jesus was not crucified, but Wes countered.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that's good. So let's deal with that too, because I've actually worked with, there are two manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery. And so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have two copies of, one is in Italian and one is in Spanish. We see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are two apocryphal documents from the 2nd century, but the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because it does things like in chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem, and neither Mount Sinai nor Jerusalem are close to the Jordan River. So never mind there not being a route from the Jordan River to like around Mount Sinai or going to Jerusalem. But there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of first century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah, which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian Italian and Spanish. But the internal content of the Gospel of Barnabas disqualifies it from being ancient. And then the fact that it's doing things like paraphrasing Dante, or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee, which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian, and I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. So if we're talking about, say, Codex Sinaiticus, that's in the 4th century. Now that is, I would agree with you, Billy, our oldest copy of the Bible in the sense of cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation copy of the Bible.
Right.
The problem is that we have individual copies of all 4 Gospels going back hundreds of years before Codex Sinaiticus. So I have a facsimile behind me of P66. This is a late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. I can just show the screen right here. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John. The only hesitation I have with what you said, Billy, is that we have single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just like, it's not that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery and you're expert, I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit.
Not so fast, Billy. Had Billy done his research well, he would have known that the book of Barnabas was a fabrication.
Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit and leading up into the New
Well,
Testament.
hold on, because do you mind if I address the Gospel of Jesus' wife?
Sure, go ahead.
So the Gospel of Jesus' wife doesn't actually mention. So oftentimes what happens is that the text of the Gospel of Jesus' wife is kind of paralleled with the Gospel of Philip, which mentions that that Jesus would kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth. And so those are kind of used in parallel to kind of for this argument that Jesus was married. So the Gospel of Jesus' wife is in the Harvard Library. However, the reason we know it's also not legitimate is because even though the manuscript, the papyrus that it's on, was carbon dated to the 4th century, the text was actually copied from a PDF version of the Gospel of Thomas known as Grandin's Interlinear. And there was a mistake in the Coptic text of Grandin's Interlinear that was copied into the Gospel of Jesus' wife. So we know that this is not a legitimate document, even though the papyrus is ancient, and this happens a lot with forgeries. I have a couple of friends who have actually worked on projects that have revealed forgeries within Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts and within other ancient Christian papyri. But the reason why we know the Gospel of Jesus' wife, and that Karen King, who kind of vouched for it and she lost a lot of credibility, unfortunately, for her, and she's admitted that it's a fake as well, was because we can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form. And the mistake on that PDF form was copied into the text that was borrowed in the phraseology of Jesus' wife. So I just point that out is, once again, with our sourcing, I think we need to make sure that we're going towards not just early sources, but actually credible sources. And unfortunately, neither the Gospel of Barnabas nor the Gospel of Jesus' wife are credible sources in terms of actually, and agreed upon by not just the vast majority of scholarship, but I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography, who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
That's fair enough. I can respect that.
Again, there is no response or rebuttal.
If you say it's a known forgery and you're an expert, I'm going to go with that.
Yet Billy claims to be an expert on this subject. Regarding the widely discredited Gospel of Jesus' wife, if only Billy had been interested in facts and had done quick research, he would have saved himself from unnecessary embarrassment. Here are a few headlines regarding the Gospel of Jesus' wife. CNN. How a mysterious man fooled a Harvard scholar into believing the Gospel of Jesus' wife was real. The New York Times. Fresh doubts raised about papyrus scrap known as Gospel of Jesus' wife. The forged Gospel of Jesus' wife. The Gospel of Jesus' wife. A modern fake. Even a well-known historian and atheist, Bart Ehrman, who said the crucifixion of Jesus Christ was a historical event, weighed in the Gospel of Jesus' wife, stating, "Some 3 years ago now, I discussed in several posts the newly discovered text called the Gospel of Jesus' wife. A new development has occurred that makes it almost certain that this text is a modern forgery, done sometime in the last 20 years.
If you say it's a known forgery and you're an expert, I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit.
Back to the Old Testament, Billy claimed that the Genesis creation story was copied from other ancient texts, specifically from Enuma Elish creation account. For starters, the Enuma Elish creation was a myth from Mesopotamian culture.
So let's go into the Old Testament a little bit. Predominantly, from my research, I discovered that a lot of information from the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation is a lot of in Genesis, a lot of the creation story that comes into Genesis. Not all of it, but because obviously it's Genesis is a much smaller version of a much bigger story. But it's literally almost word for word from the Enuma Elish.
Have you read the Enuma Elish?
Yeah, I've done lectures on it.
Sure. Do you mind summarizing the content of the creation account in the Enuma Elish for us?
Sure. The Enuma Elish is a very ancient text discovered in the Library of Ashurbanipal. And the summary of it is that it really gives us an account, which is crazy, an astronomical account of the creation of our solar system. It talks about planets and moons gaining specific orbits around the sun. It talks about a huge planet named Tiamat, 4 to 6 times larger than Earth. Earth didn't exist at the time that this, according to the author of this text, which is pretty interesting. And then there talks about a nemesis of sorts. In the original version, it's called Nibiru, but in a more recent version, still thousands of years old, the name was changed to Marduk. Marduk is in the Jewish American Library, in the biblical text, in the Torah, and so forth. Very popular figure in ancient times in the religious books and text. Marduk wanted to be the destroyer, so Marduk is the one that during its next orbit towards Tiamat, crashed into Tiamat and destroyed Tiamat. A huge chunk of it swung away, recoalesced, taking the water, land, and organic material, which basically recoalesced as our planet here, Earth. And the rest of it broke up into pieces. Some of it turned into the asteroid belt. Other parts of it were thrown towards the sun, and some were thrown towards the inner Oort cloud, towards the outer edge of the solar system. This planet or this moonlet that orbited, supposedly a brown dwarf, based on the description of it, gained a very strange orbit around our sun.
What Billy just described is not remotely related to the Genesis 1 and 2 creation story.
You said that there were like verbatim parallels with the biblical creation story. I'm just curious, when you say that there are not just parallels, but there's actual copying, looking at Genesis chapter 1 and 2, where the creation story is summarized in the Bible, what are the actual kind of parallels there that you're looking to? Because as someone who's read both, I not only do I not find parallels, I actually, and this is the majority of ancient Near Eastern scholarship with me, think that Genesis chapter 1 is actually an apologetic against documents like the Enuma Elish. What are the parallels there?
Separated the waters from the waters, for example. That's in the Enuma Elish, and that's also in the biblical text.
Okay, that I would agree is a parallel. The only reason I highlight that is that if you're making this the argument, because if you brought it up, and I mean this with all due respect, there are superficial parallels. I would agree. You know, the separation of the water, the concept of the earth being formless and void. That's also in the Enuma Elish. However, I think all the other details, you know, it's the details that make the difference. And if we're looking at not the superficial crossovers, but the actual themes and concepts of what it's saying, you don't have a creation within 7 days. Let me just say this. So the reason why I say it's actually apologetic against that is because the purpose of the Enuma Elish, which the Babylonians read every Babylonian New Year, was to point out the fact that the deities, and there's countless deities in the Babylonian pantheon, they actually come from the created order, so they're not outside of time and space. But what's the word for word?
In your version of what you believe in, you keep saying that God's a he.
Yep.
Notice again how Billy, who claims to be an expert, cannot defend his stance. Instead, deflates Wes's request to give proof the Genesis creation account was a word-for-word copy from Enuma Elish's story.
But it's literally almost word-for-word from the Enuma Elish.
Now that you've heard Billy explain the creation account story, let's compare Genesis's account of creation and Enuma Elish's account. You can judge whether Billy Carson is someone anyone should trust on this subject. According to Genesis' creation story, God creates the universe in 6 days and rests on the 7th. Creation unfolds in an orderly, peaceful manner. Light, sky, land, vegetation, celestial bodies, animals, and finally, humanity. Humanity is created in the image of God and given stewardship over creation. A single God creates everything ex nihilo, out of nothing. Enuma Elish, creation. Creation begins with primordial chaos involving the gods Apsu, fresh water, and Tiamat, salt water. Apsu and Tiamat give birth to younger gods, leading to conflict. Marduk, a younger god, defeats Tiamat in battle, splitting her body to form the heavens and the earth. Humanity is created from the blood of a rebellious god, Kingu, to serve the gods. Yikes. How do these two stories relate to one another? They don't. Billy has deceived and still deceives many people, but thank God for using Wes to let many people see that Billy lies to them about Christianity. This person left a comment on John's video. Wow. As someone who followed Billy's work and found his content quite fascinating, I'm shocked by the fact that he wasn't able to back up any of his claims and completely fell apart in the debate. Thank you for posting. We'll subscribe to both you and Wes.
The fact that Billy doesn't want it to be posted clearly communicates to me that he also didn't think it went very well. Let me just finish by saying this. Billy says a lot of out there stuff, but among it all are just patently false things about the Bible and Christianity.
We sincerely hope and pray Billy will humble himself, repent for misleading countless people, and turn to Jesus Christ for salvation.